First contact and dismissal. The massive Xeraxian vessel hung in Earth's orbit like a suspended mountain of metal and light. At 12 kilometers long, it dwarfed the largest human ships, casting shadows over the International Space Defense Fleet assembled below. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF Hyperion, her flagship at a mere 1 kilometer in length, watching the holographic feed of the approaching diplomatic shuttle. "They're making quite a show of it," Commander James Rodriguez remarked beside her, his dark eyes fixed on the ornate alien craft. The shuttle alone was larger than most human corvettes, its hull decorated with sweeping patterns that seemed to shift color under Earth's sun. "That's the point," Sarah replied, adjusting her uniform's collar. After 15 years of commanding Earth's most advanced ships, she'd learned to read the subtle language of power projection. They want us to feel small. The Xeraxian Empire had arrived 3 days ago, their fleet appearing at the edge of the solar system in a display of technological prowess that had Earth's scientific community buzzing with excitement and concern. Their first message had been simple: "We come to evaluate your species' worth." The diplomatic shuttle docked with practiced precision, and Sarah made her way to the reception area. The Hyperion's corridors, while spotless and efficient, would seem austere compared to the Baroque aesthetics of their visitors. She'd chosen this ship specifically for this meeting. It was humanity's best, but she knew it would be seen as primitive by their guests. The airlock cycled, and Sarah got her first look at a Xeraxian. High Commander Vaxter stood nearly 3 meters tall, his iridescent scales shifting patterns in a way that made human active camouflage look like child's play. 4 arms were crossed over his ceremonial armor, and his serpentine head bore markings that Sarah's briefing had identified as indicators of high rank. "Welcome aboard the Hyperion, High Commander," Sarah said, offering the traditional Xeraxian greeting gesture they'd been taught. Right palm up, left palm down. Vaxter's upper lip curled slightly. "Your vessel is quaint, Admiral Chen, though I suppose it's impressive for a species that only achieved FTL travel 50 years ago." His universal translator rendered his words in perfect English, but couldn't quite mask the condescension in his tone. "We believe in efficiency over ostentation," Sarah replied diplomatically. "Would you like to begin our discussions?" The meeting room was prepared with both human and Xeraxian accommodations. As they settled in, Sarah noticed how Vaxter's aides were scanning everything with barely concealed disdain. The Xeraxians had been spacefaring for over 2,000 years, and they made sure everyone knew it. "Let us be direct," Vaxter began, his secondary arms tapping a complex rhythm on his chair's armrests. "Your species has attracted our attention due to your unusually rapid technological advancement. However, your current capabilities are insufficient for meaningful interaction with the Empire." Sarah kept her expression neutral, even as she felt her jaw tighten. "In what way, High Commander?" "Your ships are tiny," he said bluntly. "The largest vessel in your fleet would barely qualify as a support craft in ours. Your weapons are primitive, your drives inefficient, you lack proper planetary shields, and your population is confined to a single star system." He leaned forward. "The Empire cannot waste resources protecting primitive species that cannot contribute meaningfully to the greater galactic community." "I see," Sarah replied carefully. "And what would qualify as a meaningful contribution?" "Your scientific minds show promise, despite their limited tools. We would be willing to accept Earth as a protectorate. Under our guidance, in perhaps a century or 2, you might advance enough to be considered for provisional membership in the Empire." Sarah thought of the classified files in her secure database, the breakthrough Dr. Marcus Rivera had achieved just last month, the mysterious artifacts discovered in the Kuiper Belt that seemed to defy known physics, and Project Leviathan's promising initial tests. But none of that showed on her face. "That's a generous offer, High Commander. However, Earth has its own destiny to forge. We're not looking for protection. Only peaceful cooperation between equals." Vaxter's scales rippled with what Sarah recognized as amusement. "Equals? Admiral, Your largest ship would fit in our vessel's cargo hold. The universe is vast and dangerous. Without the Empire's protection, you will eventually encounter threats you cannot hope to face alone. Perhaps, Sarah agreed. But humanity has a long history of exceeding expectations. The meeting concluded shortly after, with the Ziraxians departing in their ornate shuttle. As Sarah watched them return to their massive vessel, Commander Rodriguez joined her at the observation window. "They're going to be a problem, aren't they?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded, her hand already reaching for her secure comm unit. "Send a priority message to Project Leviathan," she ordered. "Tell Dr. Rivera it's time to accelerate the timeline. The Ziraxians just gave us exactly what we needed." "What's that?" A small smile crossed Sarah's face. Motivation. In her office later that night, Sarah reviewed the classified footage from the Kuiper Belt expedition. The artifact they'd found, a perfect cube of unknown material that seemed to fold space around itself, pulsed with an inner light. Dr. Rivera's latest report suggested they were finally beginning to understand its principles. The Ziraxians thought humanity's ships were too small. They had no idea what was coming. The hidden project. Dr. Marcus Rivera stood in the cavernous assembly bay of Ganymede Station, watching as robotic arms delicately wove quantum filaments into the experimental hull before him. The prototype vessel, barely visible through the specialized containment field, seemed to shimmer and twist in ways that made his eyes hurt if he looked too long. "The spatial compression matrix is holding steady at 47%. His AI assistant, HFY, reported. "That's a 12% improvement over last week's tests." Marcus nodded, his dark eyes reflecting the holographic data streams floating around him. 6 months had passed since the Ziraxians dismissed first contact, and Project Leviathan had been operating at maximum capacity ever since. The station's massive fabrication facilities, hidden deep within Ganymede's ice, housed humanity's most ambitious technological leap. "Show me the stress readings on junction points 3 through 7, he requested. As the data appeared, a new voice joined the conversation. "Still chasing impossible physics, Dr. Rivera?" Admiral Chen asked, stepping out of the station's gravity lift. She looked tired but determined, her uniform slightly wrinkled from what Marcus assumed was another long series of meetings with Earth's Defense Council. "Nothing's impossible, Admiral. The artifact proved that." Marcus gestured to a sealed chamber across the bay, where the mysterious cube they'd discovered still pulsed with its inner light. "We've just been thinking about space all wrong." Sarah moved closer to the prototype, studying its shifting form. "Explain it to me again, in terms a career military officer might understand." Marcus smiled. The Admiral was far from stupid. She just preferred straight talk to scientific jargon. Remember old Earth navies, how they had to build massive ships to carry all their weapons and crew. The Ziraxians think the same way. Bigger ships equal more power. But the artifact showed us something different. Space itself is flexible. He pulled up a holographic demonstration. "Instead of building bigger ships, we're building ships that can expand. The quantum filaments create localized space-folding fields. When activated, they can effectively double the ship's interior space while maintaining the same external dimensions. It's like having a battleship that can hide inside a cruiser's frame." "And the power requirements?" Sarah asked, ever practical. "That's where Dr. Zhang's breakthrough comes in," Marcus replied, bringing up another diagram. "The folding process actually generates energy as a byproduct. We're not just creating more space, we're tapping into a new form of power generation." A warning light flashed, drawing their attention back to the prototype. The ship's outline blurred momentarily, then stabilized. "Containment field holding," Araya reported. "No structural damage detected." Sarah watched the readings settle. The Ziraxians' surveillance ships are still patrolling the outer system. How close are we to a practical demonstration? "The prototype is stable, but scaling up to full size." Marcus ran a hand through his graying hair. 3 months, minimum. We need to be absolutely certain the compression matrices will hold under combat conditions. You have 2 months, Sarah replied grimly. Our deep space sensors detected a Xeraxian battle fleet assembling near Proxima Centauri. They're planning something. Marcus wanted to argue that rushing the project could be catastrophic, but the look in Sarah's eyes stopped him. What aren't you telling me? The Admiral's expression darkened. The Xeraxians sent us a message yesterday. They're concerned about our aggressive technological development and want to establish a permanent oversight presence in our system. For our own protection, of course. They know about Leviathan. No, but they've detected unusual energy signatures from Ganymede. Their sensors are better than we thought. Sarah's hands clasped behind her back. We've stalled them with diplomatic talks, but they're getting impatient. If we can't prove ourselves capable of self-defense, they'll simply take what they want. Marcus finished. He turned back to the prototype, mind racing through calculations. I'll need more personnel and unrestricted access to the artifact. Done, Sarah said without hesitation. I'm also bringing in Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Mars Defense Institute. Her work on quantum shielding might help stabilize the expansion process. As if responding to their conversation, the artifact's pulsing grew stronger. Marcus had spent countless hours studying it, convinced that its creators had mastered the very principles they were now struggling to understand. Sometimes, late at night, he swore it was trying to tell them something. There's something else, Sarah added, her voice lower. Our intelligence suggests we're not the first civilization the Xeraxians have approached this way. Their protectorate offer, it's their standard method of absorption. They identify promising species, impose their protection, and gradually strip them of independence. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. How many? 7 known cases in the last century alone. None of those species have been seen operating independently since accepting Xeraxian oversight. Sarah's eyes hardened. We won't be number 8. A sudden surge in the prototype's field drew their attention. The ship's outline had stabilized further, its quantum matrix pulsing in perfect rhythm. Now that's interesting, Marcus muttered, studying the readings. Area. Run a full spectrum analysis. Focus on the harmonic resonance between the artifact and the prototype. Analysis in progress, the AI responded. Detecting unprecedented stability in the compression field. Spatial folding efficiency increased by 23%. Marcus's eyes widened. It's not just showing us how, it's helping us. Sarah stepped closer to the artifact's chamber. Is that possible? With what we know about physics? No. But then, nothing about that cube should be possible. Marcus was already pulling up new simulation models. Admiral, I think I can have a full-scale prototype ready in 6 weeks. But we'll need to completely reconfigure the quantum matrix to match these new harmonics. Do it, Sarah ordered. I'll have engineering teams working around the clock. Whatever it takes. As they watched, the prototype's form steadied completely, its outline now crystal clear despite the impossible geometries contained within. For the first time, Marcus felt certain that they would succeed. The Xeraxians thought humanity's ships were primitive. Soon, they would learn that size wasn't everything. It was what you did with the space you had that mattered. The coming storm. The attack came without warning. 3 Xeraxian cruisers dropped out of hyperspace near Mars orbital defense platforms, their weapons already charging. Admiral Chen watched from the Hyperion's bridge as the massive alien vessels moved into attack formation. This is High Commander Vaxter to Earth Defense Forces. The familiar voice crackled over the comm. Our sensors have detected prohibited weapons research in your system. Submit to immediate inspection or face consequences. Sarah exchanged glances with Commander Rodriguez. They'd known this moment would come, but not this soon. All ships, maintain position, she ordered. But do not power weapons. Not yet. The Xeraxian ships loomed closer, their hull patterns shifting aggressively. Sarah opened a channel. High Commander, this is Admiral Chen. Your entry into our system without prior notification violates our existing diplomatic agreements. Agreements? Vaxter's laugh held no humor. You have no standing to demand agreements with the Empire. We've been patient with your primitive species, but our patience has limits. You will submit to inspection, or we will demonstrate why the Empire has stood unopposed for 2,000 years. Sarah's hand slipped to her secure communicator, sending a prearranged signal to Ganymede Station. Dr. Rivera, please tell me you're ready. Ready enough. Marcus's voice came back, tense but confident. The Helios is prepped for launch. Dr. Tanaka's quantum shields are stable, and the compression matrix is responding perfectly to the artifact's harmonics. But Admiral, we haven't tested the weapons systems under full expansion. No time like the present, Sarah replied. She straightened in her command chair. Begin launch sequence. Deep within Ganymede's ice, massive doors slowly opened, revealing a ship that appeared deceptively small, barely larger than a standard Earth cruiser. The Helios rose from its berth, its quantum-infused hull gleaming with an inner light that matched the artifact's pulse. Unknown vessel detected, one of Vaxter's officers reported, loud enough to be heard over the open channel. Configuration does not match known Earth designs. Another of your primitive attempts at advancement. Vaxter's voice dripped contempt. Your new toy cannot hope to stand against 3 Imperial cruisers. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. High Commander, I suggest you withdraw your forces immediately. This is your only warning. You dare threaten. Vaxter's response cut off as the Helios began to change. It started as a ripple in space itself. The quantum filaments in the ship's hull activated, responding to the carefully tuned harmonics they'd learned from the artifact. The Helios seemed to blur, its form twisting in ways that defied normal physics. Then, in a moment that Sarah knew would be remembered in history books, the ship expanded. Where there had been a modest cruiser, now floated a vessel nearly 3 kilometers long. The quantum-folded space had doubled not just its size, but its internal volume, weapon capacities, and power generation. The Helios's hull gleamed with energy patterns that made the Ziraxians' decorative displays look primitive in comparison. By the eternal stars, Vaxter whispered, his translator barely catching the words. What have you done? We've done exactly what humanity has always done. Sarah replied calmly. We've innovated. The Helios represents a new understanding of space itself. Your empire builds bigger ships. We build ships that adapt. The Helios's weapons came online, quantum-enhanced targeting systems, locking onto all 3 Ziraxian cruisers simultaneously. As I said, High Commander, withdraw. For a long moment, silence filled the communications channel. Sarah could almost feel the calculations running through Vaxter's mind, pride warring with survival instinct. This is impossible, he finally said. Our sensors, the energy readings, are very real. Sarah finished. And the Helios is just the prototype. Earth's shipyards are already being retrofitted with quantum folding technology. In 6 months, our entire fleet will have this capability. The Ziraxian ships began to back away slowly. The Empire will not forget this, Vaxter warned. You cannot hope to stand alone against our full might. Who said anything about standing alone? Sarah nodded to Rodriguez, who activated a previously hidden communications array. Suddenly, the quantum harmonics from the Helios were being broadcast across subspace, on frequencies any advanced civilization could detect. You see, High Commander, we've learned something interesting about that artifact we found. The one your sensors probably detected. It's not unique. There are others out there, waiting to be found by species ready to understand them. And now, thanks to your Empire's aggressive actions, we're sharing what we've learned with everyone. You wouldn't dare, Vaxter hissed. The balance of power needed to change, Sarah interrupted. Your Empire has bullied and absorbed enough civilizations. Consider this humanity's contribution to galactic society. The knowledge that size alone doesn't determine strength. The Ziraxian ships finally began their retreat in earnest, their weapon systems powering down. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, Baxter sent one final message. "This is not over, Admiral Chen." "No," Sarah agreed, watching the massive ships flee from her primitive forces. "This is just the beginning." As the Ziraxians vanished into hyperspace, Dr. Rivera's voice came over the secure channel. "Admiral, we're detecting responses to our broadcast. Multiple species are requesting the harmonic frequency data. Some are offering their own research in exchange." Sarah smiled. The Ziraxians had thought to find another primitive species to dominate. Instead, they'd helped create something far more interesting, a technological revolution that would reshape the galaxy. And humanity was leading the way. Technological revolution. 3 months after the Ganymede incident, as it came to be known, Earth's solar system had transformed. Quantum folding technology had revolutionized not just military vessels, but civilian infrastructure as well. Space stations that once struggled to house thousands now comfortably accommodated millions, their internal spaces defying traditional physics. Admiral Chen stood in the newly expanded observation deck of Titan Base, watching as the latest batch of retrofitted ships conducted their expansion trials. Dr. Rivera and Dr. Tanaka stood beside her, their faces reflecting the pride of creators watching their work change the world. The artifacts still pulsed their ancient harmonics, but now they were beacons of cooperation rather than tests. Humanity had proven itself not just to the Ziraxians, but to the galaxy itself. They had shown that true advancement came not from hoarding power, but from sharing it. And somewhere out there, the architects watched as their long-ago dream of a united galaxy finally began to take shape, one quantum fold at a time. Admiral Chen watched from the Helios expanded bridge as another Ziraxian dreadnought fell to the combined fire of 3 Earth vessels, each a fraction of its size, but wielding technologies that had been mere theory 3 months ago. "High Commander Baxter's flagship is moving to Sector 7, Commander Rodriguez reported. "They're trying to consolidate their remaining forces." Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display. The Ziraxians had arrived expecting to face primitive vessels hiding behind stolen technology. Instead, they'd encountered a force that had completely reimagined space combat. "The Ilarian quantum computers are tracking their movement patterns," Dr. Tanaka reported from her station. "They're predictable, still thinking in traditional 3-dimensional tactics." "Show them something new," Sarah ordered. "Activate the resonance web." Across the battlefield, the artifacts they'd positioned began to pulse in harmony. The quantum-folded ships responded, their fields synchronizing in ways that made space itself seem to ripple. The Ziraxian vessels suddenly found their carefully planned formations disrupted as localized space distortions played havoc with their navigation. "Admiral," Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. "The artifacts, they're all activating at once. Energy readings are off the scale." Before Sarah could respond, a new signal cut across all frequencies. The language was unlike anything their translators had encountered, but somehow, everyone who heard it understood. "The test is concluded. You have proven worthy." Space twisted in ways that made their quantum folding look primitive by comparison. A vessel appeared, or perhaps it had always been there, folded into dimensions they couldn't perceive. It was beautiful and impossible, its form suggesting shapes that shouldn't exist. "Children of Earth," the voice continued, "we are the architects. Long ago, we seeded the galaxy with our artifacts, waiting for species who could understand that space itself is merely a suggestion. You have not only grasped this truth, but shared it freely with others. This is the mark of a civilization ready to join the greater community." The Ziraxian fleet had frozen in place. Even Baxter seemed at a loss for words as the architect vessel dwarfed his flagship without apparently occupying any actual space. "The Empire has lost its way," the architects declared. They forgot that true power lies not in domination, but in elevation. Humanity, in mere months, has done more to advance galactic civilization than the Empire has in centuries. Sarah found her voice. "You've been watching us all along. We watch all who find our artifacts." Most ignore them, too focused on building bigger ships, stronger weapons. You saw the truth, that the universe itself is mutable, and that knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. The architect vessel pulsed, and suddenly the quantum harmonics they'd been studying made perfect sense. Sarah could see how their crude folding technology was just the beginning. Space could be shaped in ways they hadn't imagined. High Commander, Sarah opened a channel to Vaxter's ship. I believe it's time we discussed a new kind of relationship between Earth and the Empire, one based on mutual respect and exchange of knowledge. There was a long pause before Vaxter responded. When he did, his voice had lost its usual condescension. Perhaps you are right, Admiral Chen. The Empire has much to reconsider. The architect vessel began to fade, but their voice remained clear. A new age begins. The barriers between species must fall, as the barriers between spaces have fallen. Unity through understanding, strength through adaptation. This is the way forward. As the ancient beings departed, they left behind a gift, the full understanding of their spatial manipulation technology, freely available to all species ready to use it wisely. The quantum harmonics that had changed everything were just the beginning. Months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of Earth's first true space dock, watching as ships of various species came and went through the quantum gates that had replaced traditional space lanes. The Xeraxian Empire had transformed into a confederation of equals, their technology and culture evolving as they learned to value innovation over size. Dr. Rivera joined her, his eyes on a group of alien scientists working with human engineers on a new project. Hard to believe it all started because they thought our ships were too small. Sarah smiled. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest beginnings. She watched as a cargo vessel, no larger than a shuttle, expanded to deliver supplies that would once have required a fleet. We never needed bigger ships. We just needed to think bigger. The Australis just completed its 15th consecutive successful fold, Yuki reported, her fingers dancing over a holographic display. Power efficiency is up another 12% since we incorporated the harmonic resonance patterns from the Centauri artifact. That had been another surprise. Once they knew what to look for, humanity had discovered 3 more artifacts in nearby star systems. Each one had its own unique harmonic signature, and together they painted a picture of an ancient civilization that had mastered the art of spatial manipulation. Any word from our new friends? Sarah asked, referring to the growing network of species who had responded to Earth's broadcast. Marcus nodded, pulling up a series of communications. The Ilarian Collective has successfully replicated our basic folding technology. They're offering their advances in quantum computing in exchange for our latest harmonic stabilization protocols. And the Nexus worlds. Well, you need to see this. He projected an image that made Sarah's eyes widen. The Nexus worlds, a loose confederation of species that had long chafed under Xeraxian influence, had taken quantum folding in an entirely new direction. Their ships didn't just expand. They could reconfigure themselves, shifting between different tactical configurations as needed. They've already broken free from 3 Xeraxian protection treaties, Marcus added. The Empire's size advantage means nothing when facing ships that can adapt mid-battle. A flash of light drew their attention back to the trials. The Australis, originally designed as a modest defense cruiser, had just completed its transformation into a vessel that would have dwarfed the Xeraxian ships from 3 months ago. But size wasn't what made it impressive. It was the efficiency, the way it wielded its expanded space with precision and purpose. Admiral. Commander Rodriguez's voice came over the comm. Priority message from the outer system sensors. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Xeraxian recognition codes. Sarah straightened. They'd known this was coming. The Empire couldn't ignore the shift in power dynamics forever. How many? 50 capital ships, at least twice that many support vessels. They'll reach Jupiter orbit in 6 hours. So much for diplomacy, Sarah murmured. She turned to the scientists. How many of our ships are combat ready with the new systems? 37, Yuki replied immediately. plus the Helios and its sister ships, the Australis makes 40, against 100 Zeraxian vessels. Marcus frowned. Even with quantum folding, numbers aren't everything. Sarah interrupted. Especially not now. She opened a channel to all Earth forces. This is Admiral Chen. Implementation of Protocol Omega is now in effect. All ships with quantum fold capability form up at the designated coordinates. Everyone else fall back to the inner system defense line. She turned back to the scientists. Dr. Rivera, you once told me nothing was impossible. Care to help prove that today? Marcus smiled. The artifact's energy signature has been increasing for the past week, almost like it knew they were coming. We might have a few more surprises ready. Dr. Tanaka. Yuki's hands were already moving through command sequences. The quantum shields are ready. And that little project we've been working on with the Ilarians. It's time to test it in the field. Sarah nodded, feeling the familiar pre-battle tension, but also something else, excitement. The Zeraxians were coming with their massive fleet, expecting to crush Earth's resistance through sheer force. They had no idea what they were actually flying into. Send word to our allies, she ordered. The Empire wants to teach us a lesson about power. Let's show them how much we've learned. As if in response, the artifacts scattered throughout the solar system pulsed in unison, their harmonics resonating with every quantum-folded ship in the fleet. Humanity had spent decades looking up at the stars, dreaming of joining the galactic community. Now they were about to do more than join it. They were going to change it forever. The battle for Earth's future was about to begin, but for the first time in history, humanity wasn't fighting alone. Thanks to their willingness to share their discoveries, they had allies, and together they were about to demonstrate that true power came not from size or strength, but from the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to grow. The Zeraxians had dismissed humanity as primitive. They were about to learn just how wrong they'd been. A new balance of power. The space around Jupiter blazed with quantum energy as the battle reached its climax. The Zeraxian fleet, for all its impressive size, found itself fighting an enemy that defied conventional tactics. Earth's ships shifted and transformed, their quantum-folded spaces allowing them to adapt to each new threat.